The morning sun cast long shadows across the mining colony of New Denver as workers prepared for another day of deep excavation. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the security building, watching the bustling activity below. 3,000 people called this place home, and it was his job to keep them safe. The colony was a peaceful mix of different species living together. Humans worked alongside blue-skinned Altarians and the tall, thin Centauri refugees who had fled their war-torn homeworld 5 years ago. Children of all species played together in the Central Park while their parents worked in the mines, factories and farms that kept New Denver running. Jake's wife Linda was already at the medical center, preparing for her morning rounds. Their 8-year-old son Billy was getting ready for school, probably trying to sneak extra food to his class pet again. The boy had a soft spot for any creature that looked hungry or scared. Down in the mining sector, Foreman Pete Collins checked his equipment one last time. Today's dig was special. They were going deeper than ever before, following a rich vein of rare crystals that could power their entire settlement for decades. The geological surveys showed empty space far below, which meant either a natural cave system or something much more interesting. Dr. Helen Carter adjusted her xenobiology scanner as she joined the mining team. The colony's chief scientist rarely went underground, but the energy readings from yesterday's preliminary dig had caught her attention. Something down there was giving off unusual signals, patterns that didn't match any known mineral formations. Pete's team consisted of 12 experienced miners, both human and alien. They had worked together for 3 years and trusted each other completely. Safety protocols were strict in the deep mines, especially this far from the main colony. If something went wrong, help was hours away. The elevator descended for nearly 10 minutes before reaching the new dig site. Ancient rock formations pressed in around them, stone that had been undisturbed for millions of years. The air recyclers hummed steadily, maintaining breathable atmosphere in the cramped tunnels. There, Pete pointed to the rock face where yesterday's drilling had stopped. Sensors show the cavity starts about 20 feet in. Could be natural, could be something else. Dr. Carter ran her equipment over the wall, frowning at the readings. The energy signature is definitely artificial. Too regular to be natural crystal formation. And there's something else. She paused, checking her scanner again. Temperature readings are wrong. It's warmer behind that wall than it should be. The drilling began slowly, carefully. Standard procedure required taking samples every few inches to check for dangerous gases or unstable rock. But as they penetrated deeper, the readings became more unusual. The rock itself seemed to have been shaped rather than naturally formed. After 4 hours of careful work, Pete's drill broke through into empty space. Stale air rushed out of the hole, carrying a smell that none of them recognized. Dr. Carter's equipment went crazy, beeping and flashing as energy readings spiked beyond normal levels. "Stop drilling," she called out. "We need to expand this opening very carefully. There's definitely something artificial in there." They widened the hole slowly, using small charges to break away chunks of stone. When the opening was large enough, Pete shined his light into the darkness beyond. What he saw made him step back in surprise. "Dr. Carter, you need to see this." The chamber beyond was enormous, easily the size of a sports stadium. But it wasn't empty. In the center, surrounded by strange metal structures, stood a massive crystal formation that pulsed with internal light. The crystal was perfectly transparent except for something dark at its center. Dr. Carter squeezed through the opening and played her light around the chamber. The walls were covered with symbols and markings in no language she recognized. The metal structures looked like machinery, but their purpose was unclear. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust, as if it had been undisturbed for thousands of years. "This is incredible," she whispered into her communication device. "We found some kind of ancient facility. The technology level is far beyond anything in our current databases." She approached the central crystal carefully, taking readings with every step. The energy output was enormous but stable. Whatever was inside had been there for a very long time. As she got closer, She could make out more details of the dark shape within the crystal dot. It was alive. The creature was huge, easily 12 feet tall even in its curled position. Its body was covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb light. Powerful limbs ended in claws that could probably tear through steel. Even unconscious and imprisoned, it looked dangerous. Dr. Carter's hands shook as she took photographs and measurements. This was the discovery of a lifetime, possibly the most important archaeological find in galactic history. But questions raced through her mind. Who had built this prison? Why was the creature here? And most importantly, was it supposed to stay trapped? She spent 2 hours documenting everything before returning to the surface. The colony's leadership needed to know immediately. This was far beyond a mining operation now. Captain Morrison listened to Dr. Carter's report with growing concern. Ancient alien technology and imprisoned creatures were not things his small security force was equipped to handle. He immediately sent word to the Galactic Alliance, requesting expert assistance and possibly military backup, but the nearest Alliance forces were 3 days away. Whatever decisions needed to be made would have to come from the colony itself. Dr. Carter recommended sealing the chamber and waiting for proper archaeological teams. The creature had been safely contained for thousands of years, so a few more days shouldn't matter. The energy readings were stable, and there was no immediate danger. That night, Jake Morrison couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the imprisoned creature and the ancient warnings on the chamber walls. Why would anyone build such an elaborate prison unless the thing inside was extremely dangerous? His wife, Linda, shared his concerns. The children's school's only a mile from the mining site, she pointed out. If that thing gets out somehow, we need to be ready to evacuate. Meanwhile, down in the deep chamber, automated systems that had run silently for 10,000 years began to register new data. The drilling, the lights, the presence of living beings had triggered ancient sensors. Slowly, carefully, the crystal prison began to analyze the situation. The mining equipment on the surface continued its normal operations, drawing power from the colony's main generator. But some of that power was now flowing through damaged cables into the ancient chamber. Below, the prison systems, designed to last forever, began to adapt to this new energy source. Dr. Carter had missed one crucial detail in her excitement over the discovery. The symbols on the chamber walls weren't just decorations or historical records. They were warnings written in a language that had died out before humans ever reached for the stars. They all said the same thing in different ways. Do not wake the guardian. Do not break the bonds. Do not disturb the sleeper until the masters return. But the masters would never return, because they had been extinct for 8,000 years. As the second day of investigation began, Pete Collins noticed fluctuations in the power grid that fed the mining equipment. The energy drain was small but growing larger every hour. He assumed it was normal system strain from the deep drilling and made a note to check the cables later. In the chamber below, the crystal prison registered each power surge. Its containment systems were slowly adapting, finding ways to use the new energy. The creature inside remained motionless, but ancient biological monitors showed increased brain activity, something that had slept for 10 millennia was beginning to wake up. Dr. Carter returned to the chamber that morning with a full archaeological team. They set up proper lighting and began careful documentation of the entire site. The energy readings had increased overnight, but not dangerously. Everything seemed stable. She focused on translating the wall symbols, working with the colony's computer systems to find patterns and meanings. The language was incredibly old, but there were similarities to other ancient scripts in the galactic databases. As the team worked, none of them noticed the hairline cracks beginning to form in the crystal prison. A creature's massive form shifted slightly, and one clawed hand twitched for the first time in centuries. The guardian was waking up, and soon it would remember why it had been put to sleep. The crystal prison cracked with a sound like thunder rolling through the underground chamber. Dr. Carter dropped her translation device as the entire facility shook. Emergency lights flickered on as the ancient containment system began to fail. After 10,000 years of perfect operation, Pete Collins felt the vibrations through the mining equipment above. At first he thought it was a normal cave-in, something they dealt with regularly in deep excavations. But this felt different. The shaking was rhythmic, almost like something very large was trying to break free. Captain Morrison's communication device buzzed with urgent messages from the mining site. He was in the middle of breakfast with his family when the first reports came in. Billy was feeding pieces of toast to his pet fluff ball while Linda read medical reports on her tablet. "Dad, what's that noise?" Billy asked, looking up from his small furry companion. Even the child could hear the deep rumbling coming from the direction of the mines. Jake stood up, already reaching for his security gear. "I don't know, son, but I'm going to find out." "Linda, get the medical team ready. This doesn't sound good." In the underground chamber, Dr. Carter watched in horror as more cracks appeared in the crystal structure. The dark shape inside was moving, now stretching limbs that had been motionless for millennia. The creature's eyes opened, glowing with an inner fire that had nothing to do with the emergency lighting. "Everyone out!" she shouted to her research team. "The containment is failing. We need to evacuate now." The archaeological team grabbed what equipment they could carry and rushed toward the tunnel entrance. Behind them, the crystal prison continued to crack and split. Strange energy patterns danced across the chamber walls as ancient systems tried desperately to maintain control. The creature inside the crystal moved more forcefully now. One massive arm pressed against the weakening prison wall. Where its claws touched the crystal, the material simply dissolved. Whatever this being was, it had been designed to escape when the time was right. Dr. Carter was the last one through the tunnel entrance. She turned back just in time to see the crystal prison shatter completely. The creature that emerged was even more terrifying than it had appeared while sleeping. Standing at full height, it nearly touched the chamber ceiling. Its scaled hide rippled with muscle and power. The beast looked around the chamber with intelligent eyes, taking in every detail. It moved with purpose, not confusion. This was not some mindless monster waking up lost and afraid. This was something that knew exactly what it was and what it was supposed to do. Above ground, evacuation sirens began wailing across New Denver. Captain Morrison had made the decision to clear the mining sector immediately. 3,000 colonists began moving toward emergency shelters and transport ships. While security teams took defensive positions, the creature found the tunnel entrance and began climbing toward the surface. The passage that had taken the mining team hours to create was torn apart in minutes. Rock and metal that should have been impossible to break crumbled like paper under the beast's claws. Billy Morrison heard the sirens and looked out his bedroom window. He could see people running toward the transport center, carrying suitcases and emergency supplies. His parents were both gone now, called away to handle the crisis. Only Mrs. Davis from next door was there to watch him. "Come away from the window, Billy," she called nervously. "We need to pack your things. Your father wants us to get to the emergency shelter." But Billy kept watching. Something big was happening, bigger than the usual mining accidents or equipment failures. This felt different, like something from the adventure stories his mother read to him. The creature broke through to the surface just as the last civilians were being evacuated from the mining sector. Pete Collins and his team had barely made it to safety before the ground exploded upward. Machinery worth millions of credits was scattered like toys as the beast emerged into daylight. For a moment, it stood perfectly still, looking around at the world it had not seen for 10,000 years. The landscape was different now, covered with buildings and technology that hadn't existed when it was last awake. But something in its posture suggested recognition, as if it remembered this place despite all the changes. Captain Morrison arrived with his security team just as the creature began moving toward the colony proper. He had 20 trained fighters, armed with the best energy weapons the colony could afford. Against most threats, they would have been more than enough. "Open fire," he ordered. "Bring it down before it reaches the residential area." Energy beams struck the creature from multiple angles. The weapons that could cut through steel armor and stop charging predators had no effect at all. The beams simply bounced off the beast's hide or were absorbed without causing any damage. The creature turned toward the security team with what looked like mild annoyance. It studied them for a moment, then swatted aside their defensive barrier. With one casual blow, the reinforced metal crumpled like thin foil. Major Kevin Walsh arrived with heavier weapons just as the first defense line fell back. His military experience told him they were facing something far beyond normal colonial threats. This required serious firepower and coordinated tactics. "Fall back to position 2, he radioed. "Set up the heavy plasma cannons. Maybe we can slow it down," but the creature seemed to anticipate their movements. As the security forces repositioned, the beast chose a different path toward the colony. It moved with intelligence and strategy, avoiding the strongest defensive positions and targeting the weakest points in their line. The heavy plasma cannons fired in sequence, sending bolts of superheated energy that could melt through tank armor. The creature barely paused. Where the plasma struck its hide, there was a brief glow, then nothing. The beast continued walking toward New Denver as if the most powerful weapons in the colonial arsenal were nothing more than flashlights. Dr. Carter reached the command center and immediately began analyzing the situation. She pulled up every piece of data they had collected from the ancient chamber, looking for clues about what they were facing. "This isn't just some random monster," she told Captain Morrison over the radio. "The containment system was specifically designed for this creature. Whoever built that prison knew exactly what they were dealing with." Linda Morrison was organizing the medical teams at the emergency shelter when she heard the weapons fire. In the distance, the plasma cannons were the colony's last line of defense. If they couldn't stop whatever was coming, New Denver would be defenseless. The beast reached the colony's outer perimeter and began systematically destroying infrastructure. It didn't attack randomly or in rage. Instead, it targeted power generators, communication arrays, and the transport landing pads with surgical precision. Within an hour, New Denver was cut off from the outside galaxy. No communications could get through, no ships could land or take off, and backup power was failing throughout the settlement. The creature had effectively trapped everyone exactly where it wanted them. "It's hurting us," Major Walsh realized as he watched the destruction pattern. "This thing knows exactly what it's doing. It's not trying to kill us immediately, it's making sure we can't escape." Captain Morrison felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air, a mindless beast he could fight. But something this intelligent and powerful was beyond anything his training had prepared him for. The creature paused at the edge of the residential district, looking toward the area where families sheltered with their children. For the first time since emerging, it seemed to be considering its next move carefully. In the emergency shelter, Billy Morrison pressed his face against a small window, trying to see what was happening outside. Mrs. Davis had fallen asleep in her chair, exhausted by the stress of evacuation. The other children were scared and crying, but Billy felt something different. He wasn't afraid of the creature he could see in the distance. Instead, he felt curious about what it wanted and why. It seemed so sad and alone. Even from far away, something about the way it moved reminded him of the injured animals his parents sometimes brought home to heal. The beast took another step toward the residential area, and Billy made a decision that would change everything. He quietly slipped away from Mrs. Davis and headed for the shelter exit. His parents had taught him to help creatures that seemed lost or hurt. This one looked like it needed help most of all. Billy Morrison slipped out of the emergency shelter while Mrs. Davis dozed in her chair. The other children were huddled together, crying and scared, but Billy felt different. Something about the big creature made him think of the time he found an injured bird in the school playground. It had looked mean and dangerous, but really it was just hurt and confused. The streets of New Denver were empty except for security teams moving between defensive positions. Billy stayed in the shadows, moving from building to building like his father had taught him during emergency drills. He could hear the adults talking on their radios, using big words he didn't understand, but their voices sounded scared. Captain Morrison was coordinating the defense from the command center, when one of his officers reported movement in the residential sector. The creature had stopped destroying buildings and was just standing there, looking around like it was searching for something specific. "Sir, it's not moving toward the main shelter," the officer reported. "It seems to be waiting for something." Jake felt a cold fear in his stomach. Waiting for what? What could this ancient monster possibly want from their peaceful colony? The beast stood in the central plaza, exactly where Billy had played with his friends just that morning. It turned its massive head slowly, studying each building and street with intelligent eyes. Up close, it was even more impressive than the REPO artist had suggested. Every movement showed incredible power held under perfect control. Dr. Carter watched through binoculars from the medical center, trying to understand the creature's behavior. It wasn't acting like any predator she had ever studied. Predators attacked or retreated. They didn't stand in the middle of their prey's territory and wait patiently. "There's something else," she muttered to herself. "Some other purpose we're not seeing." Billy reached the edge of the plaza and crouched behind a decorative fountain. The creature was even bigger up close, but something about its posture reminded him of his grandfather's old dog. Rex had been a big animal too, and strangers were always afraid of him. But Billy had learned that Rex just wanted someone to pay attention to him and tell him what to do. The boy looked around the plaza and noticed something the adults had missed. Near the creature's feet was his class pet carrier, dropped during the evacuation. Inside, his small fluff ball was trembling with fear, too scared to even make noise. Billy's father had always told him that protecting smaller creatures was one of the most important things a person could do. The fluff ball needed help, and Billy was the only one close enough to provide it. Major Walsh positioned his remaining forces around the plaza, but they all knew their weapons were useless. The plasma cannons that had failed earlier were the strongest weapons on the planet. If those couldn't hurt the creature, nothing could. "Hold your positions," he radioed to his teams. "Don't fire unless it starts moving towards civilians. Maybe we can contain it here until Alliance forces arrive." But Alliance ships were still 2 days away, and there was no guarantee they would be any more effective against this ancient monster. Billy made his decision. He stood up from behind the fountain and walked into the open plaza, moving slowly and calmly like his parents had taught him when approaching nervous animals. The creature's head turned toward him immediately, those glowing eyes focusing on the small human approaching fearlessly. Every adult watching through scopes and binoculars held their breath. A child was walking directly toward the most dangerous predator any of them had ever seen, and there was nothing they could do to stop it without making the situation worse. The beast lowered its massive head, studying Billy with curiosity rather than hunger. The child continued walking until he reached the pet carrier, then knelt down and opened it carefully. The frightened fluffball jumped into his arms, shivering but safe. "It's okay, little guy," Billy said softly, stroking the animal's fur. "Nobody's going to hurt you." The creature made a sound that was almost like a whimper. Billy looked up at its enormous face and saw something that surprised him. The big scary monster looked lonely and confused, just like animals did when they were lost or separated from their families. Captain Morrison was running toward the plaza, but he was still several blocks away. He could see his son through his binoculars, standing next to a creature that could kill him with one casual swipe. Every instinct told him to rush in with weapons ready, but his training warned him that sudden movements might trigger an attack. Billy studied the creature's posture and behavior, using everything his father had taught him about reading animal body language. The beast wasn't preparing to attack. Its tail wasn't lashing, its claws weren't extended, and its stance was more curious than aggressive. "You're lost, aren't you?" Billy said to the creature still holding his pet. "You woke up and everything was different, and now you don't know what to do." The beast tilted its head, almost like it was listening. Billy had seen that same expression on dogs and cats when they were trying to understand human speech. This creature might be big and scary, but it was still an animal that needed guidance. Dr. Carter was frantically taking notes as she watched the interaction through her scope. The creature's behavior was completely different when faced with the child. Where it had shown hostility or indifference to adults, it seemed genuinely interested in Billy's calm presence. "This doesn't make sense," she whispered to her assistant. "Predators don't behave this way around prey. There's something else happening here." Billy noticed that the creature kept looking around the plaza like it was searching for something. The boy followed its gaze and realized it was looking at the buildings and streets with confusion. Everything had changed since the creature was last awake. "This used to be different, didn't it?" Billy asked. "Before all the buildings and roads. You remember when it was just trees and grass?" The beast made another soft sound, almost like agreement. Its massive form settled slightly, becoming less threatening and more attentive. Billy's experience with animals told him that this creature needed clear, simple communication. Animals responded to confident voices and direct instructions, especially when they were confused or scared. The bigger the animal, the more important it was to stay calm and show leadership. The boy looked up at the towering beast and made a decision that would become legend throughout the galaxy. He used the same voice his father used when giving orders to security teams and the same tone his mother used when calming frightened patients. "Sit," Billy said quietly but firmly. The effect was immediate and stunning. The creature that had ignored orbital bombardment and laughed off plasma cannons responded instantly to one simple word from a human child. It settled onto its haunches with surprising grace, its massive head lowering to Billy's level. Every adult watching the scene struggled to believe what they were seeing. The most dangerous predator in galactic history was sitting obediently beside an 8-year-old boy like a well-trained pet. Captain Morrison reached the edge of the plaza and stopped, afraid to get closer but unable to look away. His son was calmly petting his class pet while sitting next to a creature that had just destroyed half their defenses. Billy reached into his pocket and pulled out his emergency food ration, the kind all colonial children carried. He broke off a piece and offered it to his frightened fluffball, then looked up at the much larger creature. "Are you hungry too?" he asked. The beast lowered its head even further, and Billy carefully placed another piece of food near its massive jaws. The creature accepted the offering gently, careful not to frighten the child or the small animal he protected. Dr. Carter's hands shook as she recorded everything. This interaction was beyond anything in the scientific literature. The creature was showing social behaviors that suggested intelligence and emotional complexity far beyond what anyone had imagined. "Major," Walsh lowered his weapon and spoke quietly into his radio. "All units hold position. The situation appears to be under control." Billy continued talking to the creature in the same calm voice he used with all animals. He told it about the colony, about the people who lived there, and about how everyone was scared because they didn't understand what it wanted. The beast listened patiently, occasionally making soft sounds that seemed almost like responses. Its massive form remained perfectly still, as if it understood that any sudden movement might frighten the small human who had shown it kindness. As the sun began to set over New Denver, an 8-year-old boy sat in the central plaza with the most feared predator in the galaxy, sharing his dinner and explaining why there was nothing to be afraid of anymore. News of Billy Morrison and the obedient creature spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within hours, every major news service was reporting the impossible story of a human child commanding what military experts called the most dangerous predator ever discovered. Dr. Roy Bennett arrived on the first emergency transport from the sector capital. The xenopsychologist had studied alien behavior for 30 years, but nothing in his experience prepared him for what he found on New Denver. A small boy was teaching an ancient killing machine how to play fetch using pieces of broken mining equipment. Captain Morrison watched his son from a safe distance, still unable to believe what he was seeing. Billy had named the creature Rex, after his grandfather's old dog, and was treating it exactly like any other pet. The beast seemed perfectly content to follow the child's simple commands and even appeared to enjoy the attention. "Dad, Rex is really smart," Billy called out as his father approached carefully. "He already learned sit, stay, and come here. Watch this." Billy pointed to a piece of debris 20 feet away. Rex, bring that here. The massive creature stood up gracefully and walked to the indicated object. It picked up the twisted metal with surprising delicacy and carried it back to Billy, setting it down gently at the boy's feet before sitting again. Dr. Carter arrived with her research team, carrying every piece of scanning equipment the colony possessed. She needed to understand how this bond worked and whether it could be replicated with other humans. "Billy," she said carefully, "can you ask Rex to let us take some measurements? We want to learn more about him." Billy looked up at the towering beast. "Rex, these are my friends. They want to study you, but they won't hurt you. Is that okay?" The creature made a low rumbling sound that seemed like agreement. It remained perfectly still while Dr. Carter's team took readings and samples. Though its eyes never left Billy, the results were fascinating. Rex's brain showed patterns similar to highly intelligent pack animals, but with complexity levels that exceeded most sentient species. The creature was capable of abstract thinking, problem-solving, and emotional responses that matched or surpassed human capabilities. Linda Morrison finally allowed herself to approach her son and his unlikely companion. As the colony's chief medical officer, she was curious about the physiological aspects of the bond between Billy and Rex. "How do you know what to say to him?" she asked Billy. Billy shrugged like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Same way I know what to say to any animal. You just have to pay attention to what they need and talk to them like they understand you." Dr. Bennett set up his behavioral analysis equipment and began documenting every interaction between Billy and Rex. The creature responded to the child's voice tones, hand gestures, and even facial expressions with remarkable sensitivity. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Bennett told Captain Morrison. "The creature isn't just obeying commands. It's actually communicating with your son. Look at this." He showed Morrison his readings. Rex's brain activity changes when Billy speaks, showing active listening and processing. This isn't simple obedience training, it's genuine interspecies communication. Over the following days, researchers from across the galaxy arrived to study the phenomenon. Billy became the center of attention, but he seemed more interested in making sure Rex was comfortable and well-fed than in all the scientific excitement around him. Rex proved to be incredibly helpful once he understood what the colonists needed. His strength made repair work that would have taken weeks complete in hours. When Billy asked him to help fix the damaged power generators, Rex carefully moved massive equipment pieces into position with the precision of a trained engineer. The creature's intelligence became more apparent with each task. Rex didn't just follow instructions blindly. He anticipated needs, suggested improvements through gestures, and even corrected human mistakes when he spotted problems with their repair plans. Dr. Carter made a breakthrough while analyzing the symbols from the ancient chamber. Working with the galaxy's best linguists, she finally translated enough text to understand Rex's true purpose. "He's not a weapon," she announced to the assembled researchers. "Rex is a guardian, bred by an advanced civilization to protect and serve as a companion. His species was designed to bond with leaders who showed specific traits." The translation revealed that Rex's creators had been wiped out by a galactic disaster thousands of years ago. Before dying, they had placed their guardian companions in stasis, hoping that someday the right kind of beings would find them and awaken the partnership. "Billy has the exact personality traits Rex was bred to recognize," Dr. Bennett explained to the boy's parents. "Calm confidence, natural empathy, clear communication, and genuine care for other creatures." To Rex, Billy is the perfect leader. Captain Morrison struggled with the implications. His 8-year-old son had somehow formed a bond with a creature that represented technology and intelligence far beyond current galactic civilization. Other governments were already making inquiries about studying Billy and Rex, but Billy seemed unaware of the political significance of his friendship. He spent his days teaching Rex about human culture, showing him how the colony worked, and introducing him to other children who had overcome their initial fear. Rex was gentle with the smallest children, patient with their questions, and protective when they felt scared. The other kids quickly accepted him as part of their community, though none of them could command him the way Billy did. Linda Morrison noticed that Rex showed signs of emotional attachment that went beyond simple obedience. When Billy was at school, the creature would wait patiently in the plaza. When the boy was sick with a minor fever, Rex refused to leave his side until Billy felt better. "They're not just partners," Linda told her husband. "They're friends. Rex genuinely cares about Billy's well-being." Dr. Carter's continued research revealed more ancient sites across the galaxy, places where other guardian creatures waited in stasis. The implications were staggering. If humans could awaken and bond with these beings, it would revolutionize galactic civilization, but early attempts to replicate Billy's success failed completely. Other children, even those with similar personalities, couldn't establish the same connection. Adult volunteers had even less luck. Rex remained polite but unresponsive to anyone except Billy. "There's something unique about the specific combination of traits Billy possesses," Dr. Bennett concluded. "It's not just about being brave or kind. It's about the way he combines confidence with empathy, the way he communicates without fear or aggression." Billy began teaching classes for other children and young adults, showing them how to approach animals with respect and clear communication. His methods were simple but effective. Treat every creature as intelligent, speak calmly and directly, and always be ready to help rather than hurt. "Animals know when you're scared or mean," Billy explained to a group of teenage volunteers. "Rex can tell if someone wants to use him or if they really want to be friends. That's why he only listens to people who care about him." The colonial government established the Morrison Institute for Interspecies Communication, with Billy as its youngest consultant. Researchers came from across the galaxy to learn his techniques. Though few achieved the same natural success, Rex seemed to understand his role as both protector and teacher. He demonstrated his abilities for the researchers but always returned to Billy's side when the work was done. The massive creature had found his purpose again after 10,000 years of sleep. Major Walsh, now promoted to oversee colonial security, marveled at how completely the situation had changed. The creature that had terrified them all was now the colony's greatest asset, and the small boy who commanded him had become one of the most important people in the galaxy. "6 months ago, we thought we were facing the end of everything," Walsh told Captain Morrison. "Now we're at the beginning of something incredible." Billy Morrison continued to go to school, play with his friends, and help his parents around the house. But when he walked through New Denver with Rex at his side, everyone could see that something fundamental had changed. Humans had found their place as leaders and partners in a much larger galactic community. The boy who had calmed an ancient guardian with a simple word had opened the door to a future where humans and the great creatures could work together again, just as they had been meant to do 10,000 years ago. 1 year after the discovery of Rex, New Denver had transformed from a simple mining colony into the most important research center in the galaxy. The Morrison Institute for Interspecies Communication housed scientists, diplomats, and students from dozens of worlds, all trying to understand the bond between humans and the ancient guardians. Captain Morrison, now promoted to Director of Colonial Operations, stood in his new office overlooking the expanded settlement. Where once there had been simple mining equipment, now gleaming research facilities and training centers stretched across the landscape. The colony that had nearly been destroyed was now thriving beyond anyone's imagination. Billy Morrison walked to school each morning with Rex at his side, though school itself had changed completely. His classroom now included young people from across the galaxy, all learning what Billy called the simple rules for talking to creatures. "Remember, Billy told his class of 15 students ranging in age from 8 to 20, every animal wants to feel safe and useful. If you can show them they're safe with you and give them something important to do, they'll want to help." Rex lay beside Billy's desk, occasionally lifting his massive head to observe the students. The creature had become as much a teacher as Billy, demonstrating through his calm presence that even the most powerful beings could be gentle and patient. Dr. Carter had successfully located 12 more ancient sites across the galaxy. Each contained guardian creatures similar to Rex, waiting in crystal prisons for the right partners to awaken them. The galactic community was carefully planning expeditions to these sites. Using everything they had learned from Billy's experience, the first successful awakening happened on the agricultural world of Green Valley. A 16-year-old farm girl named Amy Chun had studied Billy's methods for 6 months before attempting to wake the Guardian found in her planet's ancient ruins. Captain Morrison received the report with excitement and pride. Amy had successfully bonded with a creature she named Star, though the process had taken several days instead of the immediate connection Billy had achieved with Rex. "It works," Dr. Carter announced to the assembled researchers. "Billy's methods can be taught and replicated. We're looking at the beginning of a new era in galactic civilization." Billy seemed less excited about the fame and attention than about the fact that Rex now had others of his kind to communicate with. The Guardians could somehow speak to each other across vast distances, sharing information and experiences in ways that scientists were still trying to understand. Linda Morrison watched her son adapting to his new role as the galaxy's youngest teacher and ambassador. Billy handled the responsibility with the same calm confidence he showed with Rex, treating visiting diplomats and fellow students with equal kindness and respect. "He's still just a little boy in many ways," Linda told her husband during one of their rare quiet evenings. "But he's also become something special. The way he sees the world, the way he connects with others, it's like he was born for this." Rex had grown even more impressive over the year, not in size but in capability. The creature's intelligence seemed to expand as he learned about human culture and technology. He could operate basic computer systems, understand complex construction plans, and even help design improvements to the colony's infrastructure. The most remarkable change was in Rex's emotional development. The creature who had awakened confused and alone now showed clear signs of happiness, contentment, and affection. He enjoyed playing games with the children, helping adults with their work, and simply spending quiet time with Billy. Dr. Bennett published his landmark study on the human-guardian bond, establishing what became known as the Morrison Protocol. The research showed that humans possessed a unique combination of traits that made them ideal partners for the ancient guardians. "Humans naturally balance confidence with empathy," Dr. Bennett explained in his report. "They can provide leadership without domination, strength without aggression. These traits match perfectly with what the Guardians were bred to respond to." The protocol outlined specific training methods based on Billy's natural approach. Students learned to project calm authority, communicate clearly and directly, and always prioritize the well-being of the creatures they worked with. Major Walsh, now General Walsh and head of Galactic Guardian Security, oversaw the careful expansion of the program. Each new awakening required months of preparation, extensive background checks on potential partners, and careful monitoring of the bonding process. "We can't afford mistakes," Walsh explained to new trainees. "These creatures are incredibly powerful. They need partners who will use that power responsibly." Billy continued to be the gold standard for Guardian partnership. Rex responded to him with a level of understanding and cooperation that amazed even experienced researchers. The boy could communicate complex ideas to Rex through simple words and gestures that the creature seemed to understand intuitively. The galactic economic impact was enormous. Worlds with awakened guardians saw massive improvements in construction, agriculture, and defense capabilities. The creature's strength and intelligence made projects possible that had been unthinkable before, but more importantly, the Guardians brought stability and peace to regions that had struggled with conflict. Their presence discouraged aggression and encouraged cooperation between different species and governments. Billy often stood in the colony's central plaza, the same place where he had first approached Rex, and marveled at how much had changed. The plaza was now surrounded by buildings housing students and researchers from across the galaxy, all working together to understand and expand the Guardian program. Rex would sit beside him during these quiet moments, the massive creature as content to simply exist in peaceful silence as he was to demonstrate his incredible abilities for visiting dignitaries. "Do you miss the old days?" Billy sometimes asked Rex. "Before all the people and attention?" Rex would make a soft rumbling sound that Billy had learned meant contentment. The creature had found his purpose again after millennia of sleep, and that purpose was exactly what his creators had intended, protecting and serving alongside beings who understood the value of partnership over domination. Dr. Carter's translation work revealed more details about the original civilization that had created the Guardians. They had been a peaceful society that valued cooperation and mutual respect above conquest or power. The Guardians represented their highest achievement, beings bred not for war but for building and protecting communities. They saw the disaster coming, Dr. Carter explained to Billy during one of their research sessions. Solar flares that would wipe out most life in their region of the galaxy. They couldn't save themselves, but they could save their guardians and hope that someday the right species would find them. Billy found it sad that Rex's creators were gone, but he was proud that humans had proven worthy of their trust. The partnership between his species and the Guardians was growing stronger every day, bringing benefits to countless worlds. The Morrison Institute graduated its first class of certified Guardian partners. 25 young people from 15 different worlds had successfully completed the program and were ready to attempt their own AWAKENINGS. Billy spoke at the graduation ceremony, standing at a podium with Rex sitting calmly beside him. The boy who had once been frightened of public speaking now addressed galactic leaders with quiet confidence. The most important thing to remember, Billy told the graduates, is that the Guardians aren't tools or weapons. They're friends and partners. Treat them with respect, listen to what they need, and always remember that the best leaders are the ones who serve others. As the ceremony ended and the graduates prepared to travel to various awakening sites, Billy walked home with his parents. And Rex, the massive creature, moved carefully through the crowded streets, always aware of the smaller beings around him. That evening, Billy sat in his backyard with Rex, looking up at the stars where other Guardians waited to be awakened by humans who understood the simple truth he had discovered. Sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is knowing when to say the right word at the right time. The Warbeast that had once seemed unstoppable had become the beginning of humanity's greatest adventure, all because one small boy had seen past the fear to recognize a friend in need of guidance.